Here, citizen comments, appearances, or petitions from the audience.
Good evening, I'm Sheila Reed. I work for Lindsay Dispatch. Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, as it is a director, I can tell you that we have a great dispatch center set up, one that is cutting edge for a town the size of ours. Through trial and error, it's perfectly arranged for particular needs. Those needs include email, OLETs, NCIC, Otis, and near constant multi-channel radios traffic for more than 13,000 calls annually. From our 3 local agencies, that around 35 per day for 1.5 per hour to 24 per day, year round. Lindsay, along with Pauls Valley, Wynnewood during the day shift, are the only 3 agencies in Garvin County to retain their dispatchers. They coordinate with Comm Center, but they continue to field their own calls for a number of reasons why. Reason 1, distance. The Garvin County Comm Center, Pauls Valley, is 28 miles away. It's a 37-minute drive one way via the fastest route from here. In a given day, there is a number of things that need to be obtained in person between agencies, personnel, and dispatch. Too distance is inconvenient, and without face time amongst the personnel involved, things become impersonal and apathetic. Lindsay personnel have always worked as a tight, cohesive unit. This would demonstrably change the lead to confusion and hard feelings, all to save money. Number 2, technology concerns. Due to the distance of the terrain, radio skips bleeds off for a real issue. Even with digital repeaters, Lindsay crews already converse with Comm Center and Garvin County crews, often in problematic error every time now. The cost in the new technology, such as more towers, etc., to overcome this, even if it's more possible, would negate the savings in the first place. Furthermore, the power grid between Lindsay and Pauls Valley is part of 3 different companies. In terms of outages for any guests who would suffer if it isn't broken, and it's not, please don't try to fix it. Number 3, politics. Comm Center has quoted a $15,000 to take over and admit they'll have to hire at least 2 more staff members, more than likely our staff, which is certified and experienced. That leaves me 3 more dispatchers that are without a job. Really, so about a $90,000, which said another is a $75,000 loss in order to pluck 1 more agency into their fold to show higher cost stats, to appropriate more money for county even revenue, which Lindsay citizens would then be paying more of. Procedures changes, the Comm Center running the show, they decide how things get done. Another pitfall of sharing console and bandwidth. Our EMS crew won't get the leisure of us doing their paperwork for them if EMS gets sent over to county. Not only will the radio signs be changed, but finding free airtime to provide broadcasts on main law and fire ground channels at the level currently used will be a challenge. It could certainly be cheaper in the short term, but not better in the overall savings. Would be negligible, and ultimately City of Lindsay officials would lose complete control of the aspects of their public services. You got what you pay for. Number 5. The future local towns which have given up dispatchers are generally the smaller communities, which are not actively growing. We want to grow, right? Many of them followed by giving up EMS, combining fire districts, even farming out a police patrol for the county sheriff. All of them regret having done so. The cost of reestablishing a dispatch center after it has been closed is astronomical. Number 6, I have lost dispatchers in the last 4 months. That has made us that are currently employed put in major overtime to make sure our city is covered. It takes 3 months to certify a new dispatcher and training. We are in our third month time frame with 1 dispatcher. She has passed her certification and she will be working full time now. We are in the works of a 2nd dispatcher who will be certified in December. We will be fully staffed at that time. All of the OT that the 3 of us have put in, the court clerk that has been putting in these last 4 months will now decline tremendously due to my first new hire that's been certified. For all of these reasons and many more, I humbly ask you to reconsider shutting down Lindsay PD. even if it's for the weekends. We've got this covered. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Summers. I am a resident of Lindsay. Even though I live outside the city limits, Lindsay is my hometown. I'm here tonight to let you know, you, the council, the concerns of amongst those present, including myself, about moving our dispatch center to the 911 center. I became acquainted with the police department in the mid-70s when my father was a reserve police officer. I learned respect for the dispatchers at that time. I feel you're making a big mistake with this proposed move. Our dispatchers are the core of the city. They have their ear to the ground and know what's going on around our community. They don't do that for gossip. They know, that way they know what's going on around town and they can help our town. I believe if the dispatch center, if it's moved to the dispatch center, response time will increase, putting lives and property at danger. The dispatchers know the area and are more efficient at getting emergency services directed where needed. Knowing the area cuts the response time. We know how accurate GPS is around this area. My example is, a few years ago, county contacted the police department for mutual aid assistance until county could arrive. County dispatch gave the address. GPS took the officers a mile away from the location. Our dispatchers, knowing the area, were able to tell the officer exactly where to go, even including landmarks where to turn. Also, dispatchers and officers work closely together. Then our dispatchers can tell by the tone of their voice if assistance is needed. They know how long a stop or dispatch should take and stand ready to have help at a moment's notice for our officers. I've had to call 911 and did not get near the response and concern from 911 that I get when I call the Lindsay dispatch. Again, I feel it would be a great loss to our community for this council to make this move. I would like to see Lindsay grow and prosper, but with this move, we will stagnate worse than we are already currently stagnating. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kent Turner, I'm here representing PASS Coalition. For some of you, I don't know if everybody's familiar with PASS. So what we are is we're the only substance abuse prevention coalition in Lindsay and also in Garvin County. We've been getting after this drug issue for about 4 years now, and luckily we've been awarded a grant. That's for Garvin County. We're getting very strategic on how we're going to start attacking this drug issue, and what we need is more help from the community. So not only am I tonight saying, hey, this is the substance abuse coalition that you have in your city, but in Garvin County, but I've also know you guys have reached a big audience, so we need more help with the community as a whole, so if we can get some more community members behind us. I have no issue with the council members. We have a very strong appearance of council members at our meetings. We average 3 council members at every meeting. So October's a pretty big month for us. Coming up this Friday, we have the Rock the Block Party. It's our 4th annual Rock the Block Party. We'll be doing that after the football game there at Glen Curley Park, and thank you so much for letting us have access to the facilities. We really appreciate that. That's going to be 8th graders through seniors. They're all able to come down there. We're going to give everybody a free taco or a couple tacos. You know, kids, they like to eat quite a few. And what's that designed to do is kind of get the kids from getting out, going back roading, doing things that the high school kids tend to do when they don't have something other to do. So we do a lot of different things like that. And then coming up October 19th through the 25th is Red Ribbon Week. 19th through the 30th is Red Ribbon Week. And we have partnered with the Lindsay Public Schools, and we have events every day that we're actually trying to get the kids out of school a little bit early. If they do a proclamation similar to what you guys are going to do much later. But honestly, we really appreciate all the help and support that we can get from the city, and that we have been getting, and we just hope to continue this collaborative effort that we have together. And I just want to say thank you Our next meeting is October 19th, I believe. We meet every third Tuesday at South Central Medical Center, and just really appreciate you guys, and love to see you there, and love to see more members of the community there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone else? Consent agenda, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on September 13th, 2021. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting on September 9th, 2021. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting on October 1st, 2021. Acceptance of the September 2021 financial reports. Acceptance of the payment of the purchase orders issued by the city of Lindsay for the month of September 2021. Approval to add Lisa Lewis, deputy clerk, as signatory on the city/LPWA bank accounts. Approval of resolution 2021-22 accepting a $10,000 Plains All-American First Responder Grant to be used to purchase bunker gear for the Lindsay Fire Department. Approval of the resolution 2021-23 accepting a $5,000 One Oak Foundation grant to be used to purchase a large diameter fire hose power roller for the Lindsay Fire Department. Approval of the resignation of Tom Herron from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Approval of application submitted by Russell Neal Davis to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mine's Jay.
It's J on mine.
It's Kay.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, it's on your one.
Okay, two different Lisas.
Approval of application submitted by Lisa Hilliard to serve on the cemetery board.
Eric, I've got Lisa Hilliard with the Planning and Zoning Commission on J. Yeah, is that wrong?
No, the agenda that got posted, those are the last two that you
Okay, all right, so I've got, okay, never mind, I've got an agenda that's on J. Okay. Sorry about that.
So it's what you read?
Yes, what he read is correct. The one that I thought he skipped had been removed.
know, on the posted agenda and on your questions.
Ours is right.
Yeah, yours is right.
Yours is right, mine's wrong.
She just has to change. She has the agenda.
I've got the new one now.
Is what I read, is what y'all have?
Sorry, I just had the one before it was changed.
I have a couple of questions if I can ask.
Yep. This is the time.
Where's it at?
Can you all speak up here?
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah. You can ask.
On the minutes for October 1st, it's not mentioned where you, the mayor, announced that the recall petition has been dropped. Is that supposed to be on the minutes?
Usually, the governing board comments are not put on the minutes. nor
Okay, that was
listed
under
minutes.
governing board? Okay, so it doesn't need to be on the minutes? And a couple of questions on the purchase orders. One is what's gonna happen with all the t-shirts for the Hog Festival now? I know a couple of us would, I was gonna make a donation towards the shirt that says staff. A couple people have made donations. Where are those shirts and where are we gonna, I mean, they're surplus now, aren't they?
So did you pay for a shirt that you didn't get, or what do you?
No, I didn't pay for, I didn't make a donation. We were supposed to be given a shirt for the event staff for helping out, volunteering.
So the shirts that were made for the event staff were to be used for that day only? They say event staff on them, and then we'll reuse them for the next event?
But they say Hog Festival.
No, they just say event staff. They just have the City of Lindsay logo, and they say event
They don't
staff.
have anything on the
No.
front or anything
No.
like that,
No.
just on the back event staff.
Correct, they're just orange and white tie-dye shirts that say event staff. Did you still wanna get one?
Volunteer the next event staff, I'll make a donation and get one. I have another question that I'd like to bring up, and, it says here, North Pole City Lights, Christmas decorations, we spent $9,800 on Christmas decorations.
We bought a 30-foot Christmas tree that was normally over $50,000, and we bought it secondhand to use at the park.
To use at the park.
Mhm.
If we're having problems supplying our employees, such as like the police department with safety gear, why are we spending almost $10,000 on a Christmas tree?
So what equipment?
Why don't you go ahead and make, because procedurally, if there's an item on the consent agenda that needs to be discussed, then make a motion to pull that item for discussion, and then that item will be pulled, and then the council will vote on the non-controversial subjects, and then you'll come back, and then you have more time to discuss whatever you want to discuss about the item that's pulled.
Okay, I'm done.
So if you make a motion to remove item E from the consent agenda for further discussion, then it will be discussed in its entirety once the consent agenda is dealt with.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody want to make?
Because I'd like to
wanna make
discuss
that
it
motion?
further.
You want to make that motion?
Just make a motion.
Yeah, just make a
Just
motion.
make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I make a motion.
Except for item E.
I make a motion to approve what is it?
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda except item E.
Second. Roll call, please.
Skaggs,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dodson.
Yes. Item 7, consideration of items removed from consent agenda. Item E.
Go ahead, Greg.
Now,
Go ahead, Greg, because now that is up for consideration.
Okay, I'm just, that's what I'm bringing up here is where was it?
The Christmas tree?
Yeah, the Christmas tree for almost $10,000 when we need city employees that need to have, safety gear.
So what safety gear are they missing?
It's gonna be.
Tasers and body cams.
Yeah, tasers, body cams, we're discussing the 911 issue, and from my understanding, our communication system is pretty outdated. We
So-
need a new radio system, and I think that's across the board for all emergency services.
Are you finished? Okay.
Go ahead.
So you've asked me like multiple questions in one question. So back to the Christmas tree. The Christmas decorations were originally purchased to kick off, we were going to hold a Christmas event on Main Street. But due to some things that had happened, that had transpired with the chamber and coordinating things with the chamber and the parade, the flagpole needing repaired, we decided to move those Christmas decorations to the park, to have Christmas in the park. As far as the cost of that, initially when we were going to be purchasing that, it was going to be a festival and an event to help raise money for the community. As far as the body cameras and the tasers, those are something that the police chief is looking into. He just applied for a grant for body cameras and tasers. So that equipment is something that the department head and myself talk about, that he's been given full authority to go out and investigate prices, look at his budget, come back to me with the supplies that he needs. So those things are being addressed through the police department. As far as the cost of $9,000 versus raising wages across all three departments, I absolutely agree that we need to raise wages in all of emergency services. Fire, police, and EMS are losing people hand over fist because of pay and other factors. And that's absolutely a reason that we need to raise their pay to attract and to not only attract but retain good qualified candidates for EMS, fire, and police. And $9,000, it's a start, but that's not gonna do it. I need to look for something that's gonna be more substantial than that. So the whole purpose, and we can get into it when we talk about the dispatchers, but coming back to dispatch, and I'll address the whole community here, the thought process behind moving dispatch is only for the simple purpose of cutting overtime. So it's only for the weekends. It eliminates the overtime. The dispatchers would.
Rebecca,
Hey, Rebecca.
let's just do the E.
Okay, we're good.
We're gonna address E right now.
Any other things you wanna ask me, Dre?
Yes, and I think it falls under purchase orders. Water distribution got a Can-Am Defender for $10,000. Where did this, I didn't hear any discussion on that.
So,
Is that LPWA? That's gonna be LPWA.
LPWA, okay.
Yeah. Is
Okay.
that on the purchase orders, or that should be a part of LPWA, which will be reading from?
Okay, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve, the off-road, the Can-Am Defender, but like I said again, when it comes to emergency equipment, I'd like to ask why we're doing this and not taking care of this.
so do you want
All
me to
right,
answer
thank
it
you.
now or in the other meeting?
Just wait.
Yeah, we'll wait till LPWA.
Yeah, let's just, if you're talking about the Can-Am
Yeah.
Defender, wait until LPWA, because it's on that purchase order list.
Got anything else for the city saying?
No, that'd be all for now.
Well, I've got a question. And I don't know if it would be under the invoices or the POs, but did the street department not use any gas? There was nothing regarding the street department and gas tickets.
I guess, what are you asking?
I think she's saying that she didn't see anything in the purchase orders involving fuel for the street department.
That's because the invoices come in at different times, so they're not always gonna be line up with them. It's a,
Well, and here's another thing, there was a PO from August in this packet. And also, we've got POs for October. We're not through with October yet, we're supposed to be voting on September's, not October's.
Which invoices are you talking about, Rhonda?
It's on the city side,
Which page are you on?
page 1.
Okay, what's the date on the corner?
10/7.
Okay.
Every one of these, and there's one for September, every one of these are for October, not September.
The reports will be ran in October because of when those invoices come in, and she puts them into the computer. That's what the date is on the corner.
so it's in arrears, so it's running them for POs that happened in September that are hitting in October.
That doesn't make sense, because if the PO was issued in September, it shouldn't be coming out in October.
The POs have to be issued before we can purchase anything. So the PO may be 2 months behind, and then we get the invoice later for it to be, and Deanne and Frankie can explain that better to you, they're with Crawfords and Associates. But the PO, we cannot spend money unless it has been approved for the expenditure. And so the PO has to be signed ahead of time before they can even buy anything.
Okay.
was an internal audit of the police department done. Why was this done?
Where do you see that?
I believe it's on the city side, on the purchase order. Page 3.
So you're asking me why there's been an audit going on the police department?
GG Music Junior, internal audit of the PD
Uh-huh.
for $1,300. Yes.
So, because I felt that there were things that were brought to my attention within the police department that needed investigating. So I hired someone to look into it.
Is it possible you're trying to defund the police department here, Lindsay?
Absolutely not. I wanna rebuild it. I wanna get them higher wages. I wanna get some wages up to where we can hire and retain qualified people.
Rebuild, what's wrong with it now?
You know,
We have no people.
Yeah, we do, they're sitting right there, and they're
Yeah,
out here in the audience.
This is the
You
only.
seem to be confused.
No,
Why do we-
I'm not confused.
You're
Excuse
very
me,
confused.
Councilman.
why do we not have, why are they leaving, is
Well,
what
wait a
we
minute.
don't know.
Let's stick to
We've
the
gotta stick
item
to
here.
the agenda item, which is the approve and reject the purchase order list. And then all the other matters, then we can discuss those once we've finished with the purchase order list, okay?
Okay.
Anyone ask if there's any more questions for the purchase items?
Any more questions over
No, sir.
purchase order? I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the purchase orders.
Second. Roll call, please.
Dodson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez,
No.
Staggs,
No.
Item 8, discussion and possible action on investigative audit with Skip Mitchell of Form Consulting Group LLC.
Thank you, Council Mayor, Councilman, thank you. Pass that around. You have a long agenda, so I'm gonna be as brief as I can, I promise you. I wanna be real clear, to clear some misconceptions. I'm not here to ask you for a contract. I am not here to try to do business with the city. One thing we can all agree in is perception is a big deal. And the perception is part of the problem here. I have worked with a group to bring investigative audits to several towns now. We were 4 until this last week, and now we're at 6. So we've had a group of citizens that have reached out to us here wanting to do the same thing. And I have tried not to. This is my home. This is not something I'll do as a business. This is something that'll be personal as a citizen. But the perception of the citizens right now is not high. And what I was offering to do, and I had spoke with a couple of you, was to try to work together to put the items on the petition to save the citizens money. In this handout, the first one is an article from our state auditor, Cindy Bird, and she talks, I think it's on page 3, about the high number and the growing number of citizen audits and why it's happening. About 10 years ago, the legislature changed what the annual audits looked at, and it's kind of become a problem statewide. So it's not just unique to this town. But over the weekend, I reviewed, for example, your last 10 audits. And just for example, and again, these examples I'm going to give, I'm not trying to have a discussion, it's simply examples. But a lot of times after an audit, your auditor comes and gives you a presentation, and they're not just real blunt with what they found. Your last audit was not good. But if you look back at the video from the night they were here, you don't pick up on that. You had 3 instances, in fact, where the auditor cited that state laws were broken. If you look at the hospital, it said the hospital had over $10 million in assets, over $9 million were not protected. But you didn't pick that up out of anything the auditor said. We all know how touchy the hospital situation is here in this town. The perception of the citizens, we should be able to look at what's going on in our town. We should be able to ask questions, and we should be able to get answers. I know a few meetings back, a couple of councilmen wanted to look at some invoices, and I would encourage you, also in there are some excerpts from the Hartshorn investigative audit. And in that audit, one of the findings that sent people to prison was that the council was not looking at invoices. The staff was giving them a list of the bills and the amounts paid, and that was it. And after 10 years, there was about $1.5 million discrepancy between the two. I sat in an Elmore City Council meeting the other night where the auditor actually told the council, shame on you for paying bills without looking at an invoice. That was Spur Associates out of Lott. So the citizens have a right to know. For example, there's certain things, and they're right, when a PO is written, it has to be written before it's spent. But when a PO is approved, also, money should be encumbered. One example is our library, the summer reading program, and that's near and dear to me. We have a lot of underprivileged kids in this town, and that's all that they get. That's the highlight of their summer. And it was nearly canceled this year. There wasn't money to pay the lady that puts it on. The PO had been approved, but the money was not encumbered. There's spending going on in this town that makes no sense to the citizens. Our free concert the other night, folks, I'm sorry, it wasn't free. I don't know what we paid, we're gonna find out, but it wasn't free. It was touted as free. Festivals don't make money. If you look at Noodle Fest in Pauls Valley, it hasn't turned a profit in over 10 years. They've done it a long, long time. When it was done by Phil Henderson, the man that started it, it made money. Ever since the city's been involved, it has not. That investigative audit has been started. McAllister's soon to come. I'm asking you to bring an investigative audit. And I'm asking you to do it through the state auditor inspector, not a private firm, for several reasons. One, a private firm is going to look at your money. They're going to look at what you've done with your money and have you broken the law. That's pretty much it. They may do a few other things. And I'm going to tell you, Crawford and Associates, you can't say anything bad. They're the cream of the crop. They set the example for auditors. I don't think you're going to have them going through your charter to look at charter violations. I don't think that they'll do things like that. One difference between a private company and the state auditor is the state auditor hires investigators and teaches them how to audit. They don't hire auditors. The state auditor, in fact, has dozens of auditors all over the state. They have 3 investigative auditors, and Cindy Bird, our elected auditor, is not one of them. They're very specialized. Now, I'll hear towns that will say, well, we get an audit every year, not like this. What I'm asking you to do is work with us. Let's work together to put an audit together that answers the questions that the citizens have. Why does the hospital have so much money that was not protected? We know we need a significant amount of money for our electrical grid. We know that our water plant needs work. We know our streets need work. And we're not focused on it. The hangar was something that was a bad public perception. To build a hangar for $400,000 that can help 4 people doesn't make a lot of sense, doesn't look good, doesn't pass the smell test. So I have a list. I'm not going to go over it for the lack of time. I'll be more than glad at any time to give it to you. But here's the option. The fact is, the citizens have asked for it. It will take, at this point, with registered voters in Lindsay, about 133 signatures. Not a lot. We had to have a little over 1,000 in McAllister to get it. Did it with 3 volunteers. I'm asking you to sit down with us. It keeps the cost down. If we have to do it through a citizen's petition, the auditor's attorneys are involved, and they're involved from day one. And they'll stay involved to the end. We keep them out. The cost of the state auditor, I don't care how you put it, it's $65 to $75 an hour. Period. With a private firm, they do very few of these. It's not a regular thing. They'll have a range, and you have to understand those guys on the high end are going to be involved. For example, an average audit, $40,000 audit through the auditor. That's $533 based on $75 an hour, or 533 hours. That same audit through a private firm at $250 is $133,000. So there's a lot to look at there. The other thing is should you find criminal wrongdoing, you've got to remember that you want to be able to seek restitution. And that's something the auditor does. They can help you seek the restitution. They can help you seek recovering the cost of the audit. But I'm asking you to do, I'm not asking you to take any action tonight. What you're going to have to eventually tell the citizens, because we're coming up on winter months, we're going to do this before the holidays. The decision you have to make is, are the citizens going to pay for one audit or two? Because I have committed today to bring this investigative audit through the state auditor. The downfall will usually be the time. As a rule, they're a year behind. If the council will call for it, I will tell you that we've reached out to Senator Garvin. There's a way to move it up. And we can move it up to about 3 months. The President Pro Tem, the Speaker of the House, if there's an agreement with the council, we'll have help to move it up and get it done timely and get it done effectively. But folks, there's too much spending going on. I'll give you an example, and I'm just using this for an example that just came up. You talked about the $10,000 on the tree. Some of those grants are matching grants. That $10,000 can be very important. 10,000 here, 10,000 there, it adds up. But you got to remember it's these folks' money. So what I'm asking you to do, whether you do it tonight or do it later, is let's have this audit. You voted to do it months ago, nothing's happened. You've got to decide if you're going to have one or two, and there's a very short span to do that. That's all I've got. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to go over anything. We can combine them, save the citizens a significant amount of money.
I just make one statement. I haven't seen the packet that's been submitted by. Sorry. I haven't seen, is my microphone on?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't seen the packet that you've submitted, but if you did not include with the packet that you submitted to the council members, your qualifications, you must do so. You know, it's very clear under Oklahoma law that any investigative findings, any investigation done by someone who does not qualify as an expert is not going to be admitted to evidence in any criminal procedures.
You're right.
That's referred to as the Doggett rule.
You're right.
So if the city needs to hire someone or use the state auditor, that in fact their findings from their investigation would in fact be admitted to evidence. So you have to have those expert findings. I don't know what type of audits you've been involved with. I don't think that you've
I think you
done
misunderstood. I'm not asking you to hire me to do an audit.
I'm sorry, I thought that you,
No,
this is
ma'am.
what the agenda says.
No,
to hire you
well,
to-
I think that's why I wanted to clarify. I work
Okay.
with groups that bring citizen petitions to bring investigative audits.
So you're wanting the city to hire you
No, ma'am.
to get a petition?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
saying that my group, I was behind the group that brought the investigative audit to Pauls Valley, McAllister. We're going to bring the citizen petition here to bring an investigative audit. But if the city will work with us to put everything in one petition, there'll be a significant savings to the citizens.
Okay.
No, I'm not asking
So you're
for
not
any.
asking?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make
No,
sure,
ma'am.
because I thought that you were
No.
again, I misunderstood this, that you.
We're
wanted to
asking for
do
you
the
guys to have an
invest-
audit
That you
done.
wanted to do the
Yes.
investigation.
No.
But you do not want to do the investigation.
Not at all.
All right, thank you
The
very much.
council voted several months ago to do it, and there's been nothing moved forward.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Ask if anybody wants to speak.
Does anyone want to speak?
On item 8.
Item 9, update discussion, possible action on the status of the investigative audit with Crawford and Associates.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. First of all, I'm not sure the agenda is quite worded correctly. There is no status of an investigative audit. We haven't been hired to do one and have no engagement for that, so I don't really have a status to give you. I can comment a little bit, though, about what I think the intent of this agenda item was related to, and that is kind of what the last couple speakers have been talking about, which is the need for some type of investigative audit. Mr. Mitchell is somewhat right in many of the things that he said. You have a couple of avenues when you're looking for an investigative audit over some scope or some number of issues. And those issues are whether or not you wish to hire a private firm that conducts these type of investigations, or whether or not you need a state auditor or investigator type of organization. Today, as I got to the city a little early, I was handed a list of a dozen or so topics that I think people have been talking about. After I read through most of these, they're really not items that I would say an audit firm or an accounting firm would be doing. They're much more like possible policy violations, possible charter violations, possible indications of nepotism or favoritism. There's very few things here that are actually truly accounting or financial audit inclined. A couple of them I've noticed that are financial accounting is the amount of money that perhaps you lost in utilities when rates did not get updated within the computer system back in 2018. So you went about 3 years using old rates and not the new rates. We can quantify that, but I think it's already been quantified by city staff. So there isn't really any need to hire someone else and pay more money to quantify a number that you may already know. The other things that are finance related, how much money's in the golf course donation account, how much money's in the infrastructure account. We have line items set up within the city's accounting system where we can answer that question within an hour. These are very simple questions, not questions of policy, which are very difficult to audit. Another thing that's very difficult to audit is bad judgment. Should we buy a Christmas tree or should we buy protective equipment for the police and fire? What one may look at as bad judgment, someone else would look at as good judgment. And so that's very difficult to audit. All auditors can really do is say, here's what happened. And then you would be left to decide, well, is that bad judgment or good judgment? And again, you'll find the issue where no one can agree. So I would kind of agree a little bit with Mr. Mitchell as far as if you decide to go a route where you're going to hire or seek a petition to ask the state auditor to come here. You'll gather the equivalent number of signatures that you need, but the first thing the state auditor is going to do is they're going to want to set a scope, which is what Mr. Mitchell also described. You can't just hand them a list and say, we want you to look at everything so-and-so did over a 3-year period. They will laugh you out of the state auditor's office. They have to have a specific list of What is it that you suspect occurred and what do you want us to look at? And then based on how many of those things you put that list together dictates how much you'll pay for that audit. If you have several dozen things you want them to look at, it's gonna cost more than if you just had a dozen things you want them to look at. But many of these issues that I think you're wanting looked at have a legal perspective to them. Is it legal to do this? Are there any legal ramifications for that? Do we have any legal recourse? There's no accountant that's not an attorney who's going to say, sure, yes, you do have legal recourse. Yes, this is a legal violation. You need an attorney to do that. So if you hire the state auditor's office, they will sweep in their attorney division to look at the things that are on this list that have a legal perspective. Most private CPA firms aren't going to touch a legal perspective if there's no attorney or investigative attorney on their staff. And that's why we would not be interested in doing a large part of this list. We would be interested in helping you answer questions that are very simple. Where is the money? How much do we have left over for this thing or that thing? Where are the line items? What bank account is it in? Those are all very easy questions to answer, and the line items are set up within the city's records to determine that. The rest of this stuff is going to require some work, and that's where I think you've got to be very careful. I'm familiar with a number of the audits that Mr. Mitchell had referred to, McAllister, Pauls Valley. There are several others that are ongoing in Henrietta and several other places. Those costs are not minor. They are typically in the $65,000 to $75,000 range when you end up having a dozen or so items for someone to look at. They don't do this for free. The state auditor is going to charge you. I do agree their hourly rates are probably much less than their equivalent perspective in the private companies. But it is going to cost you money, and it is something that you'll have to decide whether or not the cost benefit that you're going to get from looking at these issues, does the benefit outweigh the cost of what you're going to incur? If you're going to spend $75,000 to uncover $20,000 of misdoings, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Unless it's going to put everybody on the path looking forward. If you have to pay $75,000 so that everybody can get the past behind them and start looking forward and leave everything else, put all this energy that you have instead of looking backwards, looking forwards, that might be worth $75,000. But that's where you've got to be careful. You've got to really be careful to decide what the scope of what it is that you want looked at, and whether or not the state auditor can even render something. If you dig down too deep, there may not be anything that they can say. So somebody got an extra vacation day, or someone was gifted a vacation day. What's the recourse? There usually isn't any. So what you want to do is try to shape your petition to where maybe it could possibly pay for itself if it uncovered certain things. But if the likelihood that it's not going to uncover something that you could get that money back, then you're just really adding more money to the pile that you've already spent. So I would just say be very careful with what you do and proceed cautiously. The state auditor does very good investigations. I support that office 100%, but I will tell you how it works. You will have to come up with a narrow scope for them to agree on what to look at and what you want seen. And then you will have to wait about a year. They will not begin probably until this time next year. They are backlogged at that office, and they have been backlogged for a number of years. Many of the audits that are investigative audits that are going on now were petitioned years ago and are just now being started. So that's something that you're going to have to consider as you go forward. But again, I would encourage you to focus your energies and money on going forward as much as you can by clearing up as little as you need to in the past that will get everybody on the same page. And that's what I would encourage you to do. And that's not us. That's not us except for these 3 or 4 very minor bookkeeping issues that we can answer within an hour or two. So, any questions? I'll hang around in case you change your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 10, discussion and possible action.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I didn't hear you. You must have whispered.
Hey, Eric,
Yeah.
we didn't do, I don't think we did G, H, I, J, K.
Yes.
We did? That we approved Lisa and,
Those were part of the consent agenda.
Okay.
So that the only thing that was removed was
Okay.
E, so when the other consent
Okay.
agenda was approved, that was included.
I get it,
You and
yeah.
I gotta get on our heads together, don't we?
That's probably my fault, but when I.
You threw me off guard.
I did.
Discussion and possible action on the disposition of city/LPWA surplus.
Oh, we're not going to ask questions about number 9 or?
Yes, that's what it is.
I asked if they had questions.
You did?
Well, go ahead. If
Okay.
that's what you say before we move on.
Go ahead.
I wanted to actually ask Skip, but we're already on number 9, can we ask, are we allowed to ask a question?
Can you put your mic closer?
Are we able to,
Well, that's,
Backtrack.
yeah, I know we're backtracking, but
that would be, it wouldn't really be proper to do that unless you wanted to, after we finish 9 or at some point, make a motion to reconsider 8. But there was no action taken on
or
8.
maybe like governing board comments, or is that something that I can ask an open question like that?
During governing board comments, I guess you could ask a question.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Question I have, okay, so now where are we at with this audit? What do we need to do? We need to put it on the agenda to figure out which way we're gonna go, or what's our next stop on, I'm sorry. What's our next step on this to get the audit going?
Okay, so there's, Mr. Crawford, Frank Crawford made a recommendation that you need to narrow the scope of what, and be more specific with what you want the state auditor to do. If
Okay.
you're going to go that route, that's what his recommendation is. Of course, that's up to you. I saw the list, and the list, I, would concur that there were items that were on the list that were presented to him that the state auditor's not going to want to deal with, so.
That Crawford's not wanting to deal with, or the state auditor want
That
to deal
what
with?
Mr. Crawford said that he thought some of these issues on the list, the state auditor would not want to deal with because they were more legal issues. But, in terms of, I don't know what you feel like you need in terms of further investigation before you decide what
Okay,
you
I
want to
didn't
go.
know.
The
We
agenda
just wanted
item
to
now
discuss
is
that.
to consider taking action on the investigative audit with Crawford and Associates, but that was based upon a misunderstanding. Crawford and Associates hadn't been hired to do the audit yet, because where it stood was identifying the scope of what is gonna be included in the audit. So, my recommendation too would be the next step is to identify exactly what the scope of the audit is gonna be,
Okay.
regardless of who conducts the audit, to identify that scope. And you might wanna do something like that in a work session or something,
Okay, work session, okay.
where that's the only item that's to be discussed.
Discussed, okay, thank you.
Anything else? Discussion and possible action on the disposition of city LPWA surplus.
I'd like to ask how this got on the agenda and what it's for.
I asked for it to be put on the agenda to bring it up. I know of several people that have asked for a year and a half about equipment, and we keep getting told that it's gonna be put up to an auction. You're shaking your head, I've asked.
There's not been a determination on how it was gonna be done,
What do you mean determination?
because they're not all pulled in yet, everything's not pulled in for the surplus.
Okay, I asked you a year and a half ago, one of the gentleman's out in the audience, I asked you a year and a half ago about that surplus equipment, and you said it was gonna be put up for auction.
That's when Steve was still here and then he got terminated. I'm sorry. I said that was when Steve was here and he got terminated, so
Uh-huh.
that got put on hold because they only had an interim city manager until they hired Rebecca.
Okay, and to discussion with the council about possibly, taking sealed bids.
We're not ready to do surpluses yet because we haven't inventoried everything, so when we get all of the items that we wanna move to surplus and finish that inventory, then we'll be able to hold a surplus bid.
Greg, what equipment are you talking about?
The equipment that's down at the old water building.
What is it?
Like the loader, the old Chevy truck back there. A couple items that's back there that people are interested in, but they're just told that we're gonna have an auction and nothing's being done. And now we're selling some of it for scrap iron instead of giving the public an opportunity to put sealed bid towards it. Or however that works, sealed bid or, you know. But, I know he was here, I mean, he's interested in a piece of equipment out there. And the longer the equipment sits, I mean, it just rots away, mice get in it, rats get in it. You know, it just deteriorates, it loses value. And like I said, a lot of that's been sitting there for a year and a half.
I didn't know what was being talked about, so.
I mean, is there a way we can start, taking sealed bids for some of that stuff?
The way our surplus is handled, I know Rebecca doesn't know this because she's never done one for us, but the whole list comes to council. The council has to declare it as surplus. And then usually it authorizes the city manager to dispose of it as she or he best sees fit, so that the city can maximize the amount of money that they get from it. I will tell you, in the past, when we've done sealed bid, we might get $50 for something versus what you get in scrap metal and things like that.
Okay. and
Well,
like
that's a
I-
city decision on, you know, how you do that, but, you know, the fact is, if you've got a piece of equipment that has some value and there's someone interested in, one or two pieces of equipment, you don't really have to wait until everything has been surplus. You could put those items out.
Right.
If you in fact knew that there was somebody that was interested in it. But sometimes, people think that a lot of people are gonna be interested and then nobody shows up and bids or submits any bids on it. But, that's the reason it's generally all done together. But it is possible if the council wanted to do so, to put certain items, ask that certain items be declared surplus and then have those items placed up before the entire list is completed.
Okay, and I asked for that to be put on the agenda, because when I talked to you about it the other day, you said we're waiting for the auction.
If you
And you
have,
couldn't give me a definite
Yeah.
time.
Because I don't have a clue when anything's gonna be ready. That's
So an
all.
auction could be 2 years down the road.
Like
3
I said,
years.
normally we do it once a year in July. Steve got fired last July, so we weren't able to get that done. That's probably when that equipment was put out there.
So, what about this July? I mean,
We just don't have everything ready, but, I mean, if you guys want us to bring something to council sooner?
you
we
can,
do
I mean,
that.
if you want to identify that these are certain items we'd like for the council to declare as surplus, put out for sealed bids, because you think that there's an interested buyer out there, that's something that that's something that the council could do.
okay.
You need to be able to kind of identify what it is.
Specifically.
Be specific about
And
what
that-
items you're talking about.
That way we can declare it surplus and then put it out.
Well, I know the one is the loader, and the other one's the old C60, C30 Chevrolet truck sitting back there.
Say that again?
The loader,
I got the loader.
yeah, the old loader and the old Chevrolet C30 or C60, whatever you call those old work trucks. And the old police cruiser that was back there, that was sold for scrap.
It had no engine in it. It was literally just the body.
Yes, it was sold for scrap.
Scrap, okay. So if we can bring that, I guess the next meeting and, okay, thank you.
So the November meeting?
Yes.
Street improvements, discussion and possible action on the street improvements.
I think Devin was having some issues with his road, I don't,
That's been fixed.
it hasn't been fixed?
Devin here?
Yeah, he's active.
Yep, got it done. Yeah, I saw that down at the other end. I think that guy works.
As long as they can work on it a little bit of time, I'm good with that.
So, just as long as the rebar's not sticking out. This is something else I was wanting to talk about is I'd like to know the goals of the city and what we're planning on doing about our roads, our city streets. A lot of citizens are complaining and, they're just deteriorating in front of us and we're not doing anything to, keep them up. And like I said, that one meeting that you and I had, the Chickasaw Nation, and I guess you put it in the packet. They said they'd come in and help pay for a lot of this.
Yeah, that's something that is standard for them. They say that they might, or that they can. That doesn't mean they will, or that they will pledge money to it. So everyone in their district, they say that if they have money left over, that they will fund street repairs in that area if they have money left over that's not contractual.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing obligating them to pay that money to us.
But when I met with you, you didn't know anything about it. And who dropped the ball on this?
As far as what? The
As
streets?
far as Chickasaw Nation coming in and helping pay for the repaving, resurfacing our city streets.
There was no ball to be dropped. I wasn't aware what we're discussing right now because it wasn't pertinent to us. It's not money pledged to the city. It is something that they do in all of their districts where they say if they have money left over, they will fix roads. If they don't have money or they don't choose to spend money on roads, they're not obligated to do so.
And I know COVID hit and that was part of the
So
reason why.
they have not pledged any money to us to do that. So that's why hence we've not used any money to fix the streets.
But now that we do know about it, we're gonna pursue that and try to get the Chickasaw Nation to help us, or?
Well, absolutely. I'm looking at talking with the Chickasaw Nation on a number of different topics on seeing where we can get aid from them. Fiber's one of them. But as far as the street improvements, the first thing that we need to look at is our drainage issues, which is something I've been working on for the last few months, because we can't, until we fix the drainage issues, our roads will continue to decay and wear from all the water that stands on them at every intersection. So that is why the LPWA crew they've started going out and cleaning ditches with their bar ditch cleaner, because we have another company that comes back behind them and cleans out pinhorns. So this is gonna be a very large project to undertake, but we're working in conjunction with another company to clean out some of these drainage issues that will allow water to pull from the south side of town under 19th and drain into High Barger Dam. So it's kind of replacing the streets before we fix the drainage is kind of like putting the cart before the horse. We have to fix the drainage issues before we go in and repair all of our roads. That doesn't mean we can't work on the roads as we're going, because we certainly will. Like Devin said, we've replaced his. We're getting ready to start our next floor over on 3rd Street. So we have a list of roads with the most serious repairs listed on them, and we're working down that list, going through where the biggest problem areas are. But as far as like redoing whole sections of roads and stuff like that, we don't have the money to do that right now. Right now we're spending our money on replacing water and sewer lines. So we've done that through the CDBG grant. Thank you.
And is Apache Street, the one in front of the swimming pool, is that on the list? That street especially is getting horrible.
I don't have
And
the
we just
list.
had the concert there.
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me, but are you talking about on the side of the old pool?
Yes, on the
Yes.
north side of that.
Yes, it's on.
That's beyond just resurfacing anymore. That's gonna have to be all ripped out. I'm not a street expert, but you could look at it, it's,
Yeah, it's on the list.
So this is the goal of the, I mean, what you're planning right now, is you have the list, you have some streets that you're willing to start working on.
Yeah, we've already started working on a number of different places around town where we've cut out, repaired them, and re-poured them. So
Okay.
that's what they'll continue to work on.
And these are little patches, I'm talking about where, you know, resurfacing all of like a patching and resurfacing some of these streets. Is there any future goals or any plans for that?
Well, definitely down the road, but as far as this fiscal year, there is not, because our budget was already approved in June and I can't reallocate money. So we would have to address that in the next fiscal budget. So any road repairs, we would have to address and allocate that money in the next budget year.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Discussion and possible action on changes to the board membership application.
No, you do not have any control over me, Peggy. I like the new lights that you have, but I have a question. Was there not some place that we could put the old lights, 'cause I understand that they were going to be put down at the park on the walkway. With yesterday's storm, if we had been like Norman, there would be no lamps left down there. Is there not some place that those can be up out of the dirt and the air and the wind and the rain and everything and save them? They were here when I came to teach, and for you all that don't know me, I taught for 30 years, and I can use my teacher's voice. I've used it quite often.
You don't want that voice. You don't want that voice.
Oh, leave her alone.
There's a lot of my former students out here. But anyway, I would like to see those lights moved somewhere where they could be saved and used at some time or other whenever you get the money. Do we not have any place to put them?
So the plan is still to put what we can. When we took those down, some of them were beyond repair. So we tried to save them all because we wanted to repurpose them at the park. Some of them are beyond repair. Some of them are still in working condition. But once we get the sidewalk widened at the park, the plan is still to put all the working lights that we can get going back down along the walkway. But we've waited because they're gonna widen the path. They're gonna make it wider for two people to walk on.
Is there somewhere we can put them until that happens for the storm,
Oh, we could.
out of the weather?
Oh, sure.
I just think of all the snakes, the rats, and the whatever crawling through them, eating the wires.
Sam said he got it.
They'll take care of it and get them moved.
Yep.
Okay, Tammy.
Discussion and possible action on changes to the board membership application. Took the driver's license off, right? What else?
That's the only thing I was asked to take off.
Yeah, the driver's license information, but it's still up front, city
We
girls.
talked
you need-
about that
okay,
today with the
okay.
girls, about not keeping copies of stuff anymore.
And Kathy asked me if there was anything else that needed to be taken off of the application. I said, I think that should be the council, you know, everybody. If there's anything that needs to be taken, everybody should have opinion on that. educational information. I mean, do we really need that on the board application? I mean, we're just about to know everybody that's gonna apply on the board application.
But we may not, I mean,
We need to make sure there's no conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, okay. For the driver's license, and if everything else looks good, I'm good with it.
Yeah, it's good to me.
make a motion to approve.
Second.
And just so we clarify, motion is to approve it with the removal of the driver's license.
Yeah, which is what was presented.
Okay, as presented, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Dodson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Staggs.
Yes.
Discussion and possible action on an agreement with the Lindsay Chamber of Commerce and reestablish some funding with stipulations.
I'm confused as to why this is on here, because our budget was closed out and we can't really reallocate funding.
Well, I actually talked to the president, what was that, I can't remember. Jason Bridwell, yes, on, I can't remember what day it was, might have been last Friday, 2 weeks ago. And, he had mentioned something that you guys were doing budget cuts, but I think that could be something that we would like to be able to do if possible, in the near future. There was a thought that just came to my mind, but, you know, there's so much that we, as the city side, have to do for ourselves before we can actually help anybody else, which is really sad, but, you know, to be able to get to a place where we can be able to cooperate and get along and to be able to, see the city grow, that's just something that we discussed that would be pretty fair.
We didn't know this was gonna be on here tonight, so I'm just here because we don't know what the stipulations was that you guys were looking for or asking.
Well, it was just a thought, it wasn't necessarily like anything that we wanna try to put in action, but, you know, just to be able to see, you know, but basically get reports of what's going on, what you guys are doing, and making sure that, you know, we are making the forward progress that we need to be able to make so that, you know, the city will grow. It was just a thought that we had.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think we should just table it
Yeah.
and let them have their meeting.
Yeah, I think it's the 20th, right?
Well, our meeting is the 20th,
Right.
but the only thing is that anytime you're gonna put some stipulations on, something that's being given to this chamber, we have to know ahead of time.
Sure.
So the board can vote on it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's just keeping that.
I can't say,
Yeah,
it's just gotta be a board vote.
Sure.
My board.
and I'm just trying to keep that open communication.
So, anyway, but yeah, Jason couldn't be here tonight, he had a board president type meeting or something in the city that Jason.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'll make a motion to table Chamber of Commerce, line item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dodson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Staggs.
Yes.
Discussion and possible action on moving dispatch services for the city of Lindsay emergency services to Garvin County 911 for weekend calls.
I move that, we leave our dispatch services alone.
So we're gonna have a discussion, or are we gonna just make a motion?
Okay, discuss it.
Okay. So the thought process with moving dispatch to county for just the weekends is, in the short term, is to reduce the amount of overtime that we are currently spending. In dispatch alone, which is just one portion of the police department, our salaries are $150,000 a year. In 6 months, we've had an additional $25,000 in just overtime pay. We have an attrition problem, not only with EMS, fire, and the police department. We're losing emergency service personnel. And so when I was presented with this issue of losing personnel due to stability, job stability, due to low wages, due to career growth, the ability to promote and to advance in their careers. When this was brought to my attention that we were losing all of these people in emergency services because we couldn't get their pays high enough to become competitive, I have the task of looking at the entire budget and trying to decide what is good for the whole city, using the budget that has been signed off on by council. So I don't get any new money coming in. I have to use the budget that we already have, that's already been approved. So in looking at the budget and reviewing the numbers and that, the first thing I did was have a meeting with my 3 chiefs and ask them what their thoughts were and how they thought it would affect their departments and what their thought processes were on moving dispatch in the short term to get overtime reduced. All 3 of my chiefs were in support of reducing the overtime and eliminating the overspending, because it's a temporary move. We have 4 dispatchers. Right now they work 12-hour shifts. If they go to Monday through Friday and work 8-hour shifts, then that cuts out all the overtime. We would kick it over to county on weekends only. County has their own protocol, Lindsay's protocol that they would use. They would tone out our own services using our tones. They would do all the equipment upgrade on their end to support us. The response time is actually faster because the call goes to county and then it comes, if you dial 911, it goes to county and then it comes to Lindsay. Well, on the weekends, it would go directly to county and be dispatched out on the weekends. It's a cost savings for the entire city. When we cut the overtime spending, weekends only, we're not losing any jobs. I'm not replacing any people. All I'm saying is we can't continue to afford to pay overtime for the rest of the year because we can't staff it properly. And it's creating a large deficit, and if we could save that money, that's money that we can put back into wages to help raise the wages up, not only for the police, but for the fire and the EMS, so that they can retain people. So this is a business decision based off numbers on how do we affect change and what's right for the whole city, not one department, not one portion of a department, but for the entire city. Everyone keeps their job, the response time is faster, and it's a way to cut overtime. So that's what this proposal is about.
I have a question.
Sure.
Where's your residence located?
Are we discussing dispatch services right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where do I live? I live in Blanchard.
In Blanchard.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you asked where I didn't know that you asked where her residence is.
Okay, I live here, and I think that all of us do. And that's kind of you're asking us, okay, question I have, why do you keep saying it's temporary? What's gonna be the fix? Why is this temporary?
When I say it's temporary is because if 2 things are gonna happen. Either we're gonna hire more dispatchers, which has been something that we've struggled with in the past, as you heard Sheila speak to. We've had a hard time hiring, training, and retaining dispatchers. So when you drop below 4 dispatchers, you can't maintain those 12-hour shifts, and something has to affect the change. You either have to change the shifts, cut the overtime, you have to do something to stop paying out that overtime.
Why is it a problem giving them overtime, but other departments can get overtime?
Because other departments, when they get overtime, those are one-off situations where it's something that has to be done. This doesn't have to be done. We have a choice. We have a choice to not spend the overtime and kick it to county on weekends and save that money, where I don't have a choice when I send out people to do rereads for electric meters that have to be ran. So there's 2 different types of overtime, and there's some that you can make other decisions to account for, and then there's some that you're always gonna have. happens, the
overtime that we've been putting in, the 60 and 70 hours a week, will cease this week since my second dispatcher is certified. She can take on a solo shift now. Now where I have 4 dispatchers to do 12-hour shifts, I am staffed. I get my 5th dispatcher certified, then my court clerk can go back to being a court clerk.
so what's wrong with kicking it over for 3 weeks till we get somebody ready to go?
Where
We need
where
one
was the
ready to
help
go.
when I needed it 4 months ago?
This is something I've been working on for months trying to get accomplished. This is something that's been in the works for a while. It's been being talked about for months.
Exactly, who's gonna handle, if the police officers have to arrest somebody on the weekend, who's gonna man the jails?
We would have a
Who's gonna
jailer.
man all the other things that need to be took care of that a dispatcher in Lindsay does?
Garvin County doing it for free?
No, Garvin County charges $40 a day. To have our jails.
So $40 a day versus salaries, I mean.
Do you wanna keep it here, or do you wanna send all our money to Falls Valley?
So to put it in perspective, if I put all of dispatch over to Garvin County, it's $15,000. $15,000 a year for Garvin County to handle it all.
But
It's
you get what
100,
you pay for.
but it's 150,000 plus the 25 in overtime, so we're at 175,000 this year to date that we've already spent, and that cost us 15. So 15,000 versus 175,000, and that 175,000 could be taken and added into the police department, EMS, and fire, and we could go from them making $10 an hour to making $18 an hour. Then we could maybe attract and retain good police officers, and no, not saying that you guys aren't, but we can attract, retain police officers.
So sacrifice 5 dispatchers for the benefit of all the others.
Well, actually, at this point, there's no jobs being lost, right? So at this point, going over on the weekends doesn't affect you guys at all, except for it stops the overtime.
Vulnerable on the weekend?
Pardon?
Are we less vulnerable on the weekend?
Absolutely not. Look at Billy. Billy's the 911 dispatcher for Garvin County. She lives in Lindsay. I asked her the same question. I asked her the same question. I said, would you be more apt or more or less apt to have dispatch at Garvin if you lived in that community? She said it wouldn't make a difference to me at all. The calls come here first anyway. Then they get dispatched out. So
50% of our calls come directly into our lines that need medical help.
yes,
We're not 911.
and that line will still be open. Like if on the weekends, if it goes to the weekends.
Hold it, we need to get a little bit of control here. If you want to allow people to speak, they actually need to come up one at a time to the podium if you want to open it up to do that, rather than having everybody try to talk at the same time. It can't be picked up, you can't understand what everybody's saying.
I've got a question I want to direct to someone. Skip, would you come up here, please?
Yes, whoever you're asking questions, you have them come up to the front so that we don't have people talking over each other so people can't hear what's going on.
Can you explain, is there 911 money that comes into Lindsay?
Yeah,
Is
there's
there funding?
county money now.
Okay, can you explain how that works?
Well, my understanding is it's all changed, but I understand we get a penny through 911 that's dedicated for Lindsay, which was one of the questions I had about our ambulance being in Elmore City.
Okay. So we get a penny.
Dedicated.
Dedicated
For Lindsay. That we used to not get
from the 911.
911. We haven't had that in the budget in the past.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Robin's got a motion on the.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor.
Motion on the floor.
Still
Your motion
stand.
basically was to,
Keep dispatch
To
where it
keep
is.
our dispatch here.
I was thinking it was like to reject the motion. Your motion is to retain the dispatch services in the city
Correct.
of Lindsay. Yes. Okay.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Dodson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Staggs.
Yes.
This Discussion and possible action to enter into executive session pursuant to 25 Oklahoma statute 307B1 to discuss and evaluate the employment and performance of city manager and trust manager Rebecca Nimberger. Council reserves the right to pull into the executive session anybody necessary to complete this task.
Before we move any further on this, I want to make it clear that in an executive session to deal with a personnel matter, third-party citizens cannot come in and to the executive session. If anyone has anything to say, either in favor of or opposed to, related to the evaluation and performance, whatever they have to say has to be done publicly in the public meeting. They cannot be brought into the closed-door session. Their comments have got to be made publicly, right? Just wanted to make sure that's clear. Somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Staggs,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Okay. About to reconvene the meeting. Roll call, please.
Staggs.
Here.
Hernandez.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Stevens. Miller.
Here.
Dodson.
Here. Discussion and possible action on items discussed in executive session pursuant to 25 Oklahoma Statute 307B1 to discuss and evaluate the employment and performance of city manager, trust manager, record Nierenberger. Make a motion to table.
Or just no action.
It's really just no action.
No action. City manager comments? Governing board comments?
I would like to ask Skip, you mentioned we would have to bring something to the state?
Are you talking about the audit?
Yeah.
Okay, to get it started, there's two ways. When I start on the petition, I will start with a list of parameters that I want. And the auditor will look at that and try to trim it. Now, on a petition drive, I'm trying to keep it to 2 years because it'll be a year before it comes, and most things will have a 3-year statute of limitations. So by the time the audit comes, I'm covering the statute. On a situation like this, I would encourage, the audit division is led by Brenda Holt, and Rainer Stackowitz is her lieutenant. They would come and visit with the council if they had a little bit of notice. They are far behind. Now, it's true
Yeah, we
that
can't
they
go
are.
too far out on this, just on the governing board comments, okay? So, make it short.
I don't know how to make it any shorter to answer the question, but in this case, you would simply set up a meeting with them. And one question that you did have was on the time frame. Governor, Speaker Pro Tem, Senate President Pro Tem, Attorney General, and the local DA, any of those that call for it, and I believe our Senate President Pro Tem will, it moves them to the front of the line. Pauls Valley got bumped because the governor called for one and bumped us back one. So we've spoke with the senator about that, so.
So we definitely, we need to find the scope.
I would encourage you to sit down with the auditor. They would come down if you had a workshop. We could set it up where either Brenda Holt or Rainer Stackowitz would come down and work with the council to keep not only the scope, but to keep the cost down. That's always one of their efforts, is to keep the cost from being prohibitive and to be just a waste of money.
I think it would be a good idea.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a proclamation here I'd like to read. Whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs, and whereas the Past Prevention Coalition and National Family Partnership are sponsoring the National Red Ribbon Campaign, offering citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of legal drugs, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, whereas business, government, parent, law enforcement, media, medical, religious institutions, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. And whereas the City of Lindsay, Oklahoma further commits to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Lindsay, Oklahoma does hereby proclaim October 23rd through October 31st as a week to observe the 2021 Red Ribbon Week, and encourages its citizens to participate in drug prevention education activities, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free community. given under my hand and the seal of the city of Lindsay on this 11th day of October 2021.
Can we get a picture of you with that?
Can't have it like.
He had to leave. Yeah.
Oh, he left.
Yeah, we want to take a picture of him.
I'm not gonna photobomb you, I promise you that.
Make a motion to adjourn to LPWA meeting.
Second.
Johnson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens. Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Staggs,
Yes.
I'd like to call to order the regular Lindsay Public Works Authority meeting dated October 11th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Staggs,
Here.
Hernandez,
Here.
Henderson,
Here.
Stevens. Miller,
Here.
Dodson,
Here. Consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on September 13th, 2021. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting on September 9th, 2021. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting on October 1st, 2021. Acceptance of September 2021 financial reports. Acceptance of the payment of the purchase orders issued by the City of Lindsay for the month of September 2021. Ratification of City Council's action to add Lisa Lewis, Deputy Clerk, as signatory on the City LPWA bank accounts. Ratification of City Council's action on investigative audit with Skip Mitchell of Forum Consulting Group, LLC. Ratification of City Council's action on investigative audit with Crawford and Associates. Ratification of City Council's action on the disposition of City LPWA surplus. There were no action on G, H, or I.
Did y'all have any other purchase orders you want to give me anytime? Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Roll call, please.
Staggs,
No.
Hernandez,
No.
Henderson,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Dodson,
Yes. Consideration of items removed from the consent agenda, there were none. Discussion and possible action on bid received on RFP 2021-11-B for the construction of a maintenance barn for the LPWA department. There were no bids received. Trust manager comments? Government board comments? Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Dodson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Stevens, Henderson,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Staggs.
Yes.